Welcome, everyone. Today's keynote is with Sara, and it is Thursday, September 24th. It is with heavy hearts we have to say goodbye to James King. James was a huge part of our organization and was the reason we held the event at National Institutes of Health. And this is a moment for us to be able to thank James for all of his years of service, for his strong commitment to community, and for the friendship that we all had. I just want to be very clear that we've missed James very, very much. There's no segue into this part, but let's just start with the Thursday schedule. The CTAC networking room is open from 10 a.m. until 6:15. This is where you can meet with sponsors and talk to them about any of the presentations they've had. Today's lineup was this morning with Acquia and continues on through today at 4:30. When there is not a presentation going on in the networking room, it's free for anyone to come in and chat. Tomorrow, we have these presentations going to be taking place. They're very short presentations, and we highly recommend that you take a moment to meet with our sponsors. The event isn't even possible without them. Additionally, we have Birds of a Feather scheduled all throughout the week, well, the next 2 days. Please check the BOF page on our website to find out exactly what's available. Don't forget that on Drupal GovCon Slack, you can actually see the job board. There have been several who have noted that they are hiring. As a reminder, you are responsible for committing to the code of conduct. We are enforcing this. Please take a look at it as a refresher. Additionally, live captions are being done, and you can, in the Zoom room, not on the keynote, turn on and off your live captions. Now for a word from our sponsors.
Government is changing, and the bar of citizens' expectations is rising. Today, they're looking for more personalized and tailored experiences while interacting with government agencies. At Acquia, we bring digital experiences to life for the world's most ambitious organizations. And we are the only digital experience platform that's made for Drupal. Constituent data and agency applications often live in siloed systems and software applications like a CRM or other legacy database. Acquia integrates these critical systems to help build a 360-degree view of citizens and inform your digital marketing campaigns, maximizing your technology stack. Armed with those profiles, agencies can create automated and personalized messaging to guide citizens through a tailored information journey, ensuring they're exposed to the next best action, however they choose to engage. Over the life of a citizen's journey, our integrated solution leads to a holistic understanding of audiences' behavior across channels. Ultimately, this helps agencies make smarter decisions about their content and delivery.
Is a full-service agency focused on creating elegant solutions to solve complex problems. At our core, we're dedicated to digital transformation for our clients, taking existing projects and ideas and developing them into fresh experiences that engage users. We build products for all manner of clients across the federal and commercial sectors, from award-winning apps like Pulse to high-performance news sites like Voice of America. Our dedicated teams focus on crafting the right solutions to meet every project's needs, whether that's high availability decoupled Drupal solutions like NASA.gov or custom e-commerce solutions for USGS. Mobomo has the expertise to help your organization develop and innovate the platforms and products that drive your business. For the 8th year in a row, Mobomo has landed on the Inc. 5000's fastest growing companies list, and we don't expect that expansion to slow down anytime soon. If you're interested in becoming part of our team, check out mobomo.com/careers.
Thank you again to our sponsors, Acquia, Debug Academy, Mobomo, CTAC, and again, for Acquia, helping with our captioning. We have a whole host of sponsors as well, and we highly recommend that you take a look at their products and check out our networking room. And without further ado, I'm going to stop my screen share so that Sara can start hers. And I'm going to very briefly talk about Sara as an introduction. Years ago, I met Sara at the Web Managers University Conference. We sat there and had coffee, and I said, gee, would anybody come if I did something on Drupal? And she's like, yes, you should totally do that. I'm like, I don't know. She's like, I'll just put it up there for you. So I actually posted an unconference session on Drupal, and I walked into a standing room only. If it hadn't been for Sara, none of this event, the organization, the things that we have been able to do with the webinars, our half days, and of course, the conference, none of it would be possible without Sara. So without further ado, I am so thrilled to introduce you to Sara Cope, not only an amazing friend of mine, but an amazing engineer. Sara, all yours.
Wow, thanks so much for that introduction. I love that story. It's so cute and fun. And thanks everyone for joining me today to help kick off day one of Drupal GovCon. I'm super excited to be here again. I think this is my 4th year at Drupal GovCon. So I've done 2 talks and a training day and now a keynote, and it's just super exciting and I'm so thankful. So I am going to share really quick. And my computer is making me put in a password for some reason. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep, totally can.
Awesome, cool, okay. So, you know this by now, I'm Sara Cope. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a fully remote engineer and program manager at the General Services Administration in the Technology Transformation Services. So in my primary role, I'm on digital.gov, and I'll be showing some of my work, some of my predecessors' work, and also some work from other teams today. So if you joined yesterday's keynote with Joe Castle on code.gov, we'll be talking about some of those projects as well. And I wanted to start off with a disclaimer here, just that I am not actually a UX expert, which is kind of funny, but I don't have a PhD in human factors, anything. I'm not a trained researcher. I'm just someone trying to do a little bit better every day with the things that I have and make improvements in my program for all of you at agencies so that you can better serve. I'm really here to tell you how smart I am or anything like that, but really to be a champion and a cheerleader for you and your UX practice, because it really does matter in everything we do every single day. So I thought I would start by just laying out a definition so that we're all on the same page. And this definition specifically came straight out of usability.gov. And it says that UX is the understanding of your users, their needs, values, abilities, and limitations, and being able to balance those aspects with your program and organization's business goals. And on the right here, I have a little graphic. It also came from usability.gov. And I included this because user experience isn't just one thing. It's a whole lot of things. And sometimes I will say usability interchangeably with user experience, but really usable is just one quality attribute of the user's experience. We also have a lot of other things like accessible, findable, useful, desirable, valuable, and credible. And what I want to talk to you about is that a UX practice really can be developed regardless of your experience, the time you have, even, I would argue, and how large your budget is. It's not something that you can overlook. Have access to a dedicated UX staff or a specific UX budget. And that's because UX really starts with a mindset. And then you can build those skills along the way. And just by stopping when you're on a project, no matter if you're at the beginning or end or anything in between, if you stop and ask yourself this set of questions, perhaps kind of as like a starter, then you can better advocate for the user and their experience, and which in turn is a benefit to your program. So just a couple of these questions are, is this thing that I'm building what users really want? Would it be useful to them? A big consideration is, are we creating a similar experience for everyone? And that goes to like accessibility and friendliness, and talking about the findability quality attribute. Can users actually find what they need? And in the end, with everything that we're doing, are we fostering trust from our users? And that's really important. So I'm going to make kind of a bold statement here. This is not something that I like, don't quote me on this. It came from other people. It's something I've heard before and something I believe as well. And that is that user experience is absolutely required for connecting the work that we're doing with the public that we serve. Because in the end, we should be defining success of our projects by the satisfaction of the people who is using them. If not considering user experience and usability, then it's truly impossible to have a successful project. It doesn't matter if you have a project that comes on under budget or on a track schedule. If the user doesn't like what you're doing and can't use it, none of that's really relevant. So here's a quote from a senior product designer. And it says, "I get very uncomfortable when someone makes a design decision without customer contact." And so I think in the federal government, we really need to normalize this feeling of being uncomfortable when folks are making design decisions, feature decisions, and I would argue even things implementation without involving the actual users of those things. And UX shouldn't be an afterthought or some sort of add-on that you do later. It should be where we start, and where we finish, and be involved in every phase of our projects. But it's not easy, right? We all know there are challenges. And here's a list of challenges that came from another program at TTS. The 10X program did some research, and they found that a lot of folks in federal agencies have some common issues. And if I took this list and kind of tried to distill it down to just a few, I would probably say that those questions that people really have are, what should I do and where do I start? And those are really good questions. And so what I would encourage you to do is just start now. Start with what you have wherever you're at in your program or in your project, and just start. And then create a small experiment so that you can find something that you don't have confidence in, you're a little unsure of, and get some more information about it, make some tweaks and improvements along the way, and just use whatever tools that you already have access to. You don't need to go out and buy a lot of fancy software right off the bat. Just start where you are with what you have. And so I have found in my UX practice and developing that the things that I was doing kind of followed a formula. So I've put that together here today, and that's kind of really what I want to focus on, is how to develop formulas and patterns and templates so you can spend a little time up front doing these things and making it easier for yourself along the way. So the first thing that you really need to do when starting a UX experiment is really start with a question. What questions do you have, do your stakeholders have, that you're not really able to answer from the user perspective? And one way we tried to do that and answer questions and develop them within Digital Gov was by doing a research alignment workshop. And we used this to generate questions the team had and prioritize our research themes to drive the creation of our UX plan. So you're seeing the kind of final slide. Out of this tool, we used a whiteboard tool, which let the team virtually all come in and add sticky notes to the board. So the first couple of parts out of this was our team just brainstorming questions that they had around our product, around our users, the services that we provide, and all those things. And then we form, like, who are the people involved, who can help us answer these questions. Now, if you already have user personas developed, you can absolutely pull those in and use those user personas to help you identify who can answer what questions. But if you don't, you can just use your experience or previous research on your team to help identify that. So what you're seeing here is the final piece of that workshop. We spent, I think, 2 sessions, about 30 to 45 minutes each, just developing this research grid. And this is super helpful because we could do it all remotely. Everyone got to participate. And this kind of gives us the jumping off our questions. So here are some of the questions that we generated out of that workshop. And they were, what barriers do people have when contributing content to our site, which topics are most useful to community members, which ones might we be missing, is our navigation useful and clear? When a community member comes to our website, what are they looking for? Like, what do they really need? And you'll find if you're doing a workshop like this, there'll be some common themes in the questions that your team will probably come up with. And those are going to center around like what's most popular or least popular, most effective or least effective, what is missing, those sort of things. And you can kind of see that here as well. So once you have developed a hypothesis or a question to answer, you want to look at the metrics that may be related to or impacted by any possible change. And here are some example metrics that you can consider. Some metrics you want to increase and some metrics you want to decrease. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And identifying these metrics and grabbing a baseline number to record before you dive into making any changes with your UX experiment is really important, because that helps you see your beginning state and ending state and calculate like what's the return on these changes at the end. So having this is really helpful for putting that in your success story when you're done with your experiment. No, my slide isn't advancing. There we go. So I put together this little metrics Mad Lib to help you kind of think about some of the things you might want to identify. So first you'll take your question and you'll say, okay, here's what I want to know. I want to know what barriers exist to contributing content to my website so that I can remove those barriers and increase quality relevant content on my site. And you need to be able to answer the question, how do I know when I am successful in this work? And that's where then you will identify the metrics that help you reach that success of whatever your project might be. In this specific example, I just stuck in here, increase the average number of author submissions per month. And then I added an additional metric of increasing the average session duration, because while I do want to get more contributors to my site, I want to also make sure that it is quality content that people are interested in. And so having that extra success metric of average session duration helps me get a better picture of if I am successful. So once you have your question and your baseline metric, you want to start a round or rounds of planning and then collecting whatever data and information you need for your experiment. And on my teams, we usually start with a little UX project plan. Here's an example of one from digital.gov. It's just, I think, 1 page and a quarter, not something super involved or super time consuming. It just gives everyone an idea of what you want to do, who you're doing it with, and the different activities that you're going to use to execute this approach. And then underneath activities, which you can't see here, you would have like outputs and measures of success. And I do have some templates. I will be dropping links in the Slack channel after my talk with resources on a lot of the things that I'm talking about today. So I do have a template for a couple templates actually for UX and the recently released 18F UX guide. So you do want to consider multiple methods to help you collect data and information. And here's a sample of different methods that we use on Digital Gov, and we use them on code.gov as well, that you can use without having a ton of resources or, like I said, buying any extra tools or making any new investments. And what you'll see here is a mix of the quantitative methods that you can collect information. So analytics data, search data, feedback collection through touch points, and then some qualitative methods through small DIY user research, usability testing, and then just talking of practice. So the quantitative helps us identify what's happening, and then the qualitative helps us identify the why things are happening or how, and that's really important. So to dive into the DIY user research interviews that we've done on a couple of programs that I've participated in, they're really small and they're meant to be a little informal, not super time consuming, and things that you can do like in a day or two. But you'll want to do the research often to kind of make up for keeping the research small. So in the ones that we've done, we usually keep it to like 3 to 5 participants. And we've created a number of inputs along the way that we use. So we have an email template, a participant consent form, and an interview guide. And once you develop those inputs, you can use them over and over again each time you do these user research interviews. So you don't have as much upfront commitment every time you want to do them. And then we keep it simple, and the outputs that we create are just a few things. So we have the recorded interview. If we happen to record it, we don't always. We have the observer notes of whomever from the team joined, and then some quick lessons learned for that particular round of testing, and then a debrief document. And so, like I said, we want to keep it small scale, 5 people max, and try and make it doable in one day. What I actually do though is start them around 11 and try and plan them out through the day. So that way you can get folks virtually on the East Coast and on all the way to the West Coast, and then come around the next morning and finish up my debrief document. So you can do whatever works for you, but try and keep it brief, over a day or day and a half. What we have done is use our communities to find participants. So on the code.gov team, we use the code listserv to get participants. And on Digital Gov, we use actually several listservs to find people who were interested in participating in our user research and usability testing. And we always had great success with that. What I like to do after a couple times of trying this is schedule 50-minute interviews with, and that if you're doing it virtually is a little too short. People need time to join and get acclimated and just get situated. And anything more than that was just kind of tiring. And when we created our script, we use the same formula for that as well. So you want to have one easy opener, maybe 2 easy openers. So the first question is always, tell me about yourself and what you do. And then if we're doing usability testing, I want to get people comfortable with whatever we're testing them on. So we'll have them share their screen and open up the web page and just give me general thoughts. What do you think about this web page? What stands out to you? What do you think it's for? Super easy for them to just give their opinion. And then 3 tasks to complete and 1 open-ended question. This is something like, Is there anything else you want to share with us? Pretty simple. And I find that we almost always get, if we're using this formula, this fits into a 50-minute interview really nicely. And when you're creating your script, you can focus on those major questions or blockers that you want to get answered. Then when you're done, you just write up a 1-page debrief document, spend less than 30 minutes creating it. And I like to actually put the document in landscape. So there's even more condensed space. So it's not something I'll spend a ton of time in. It doesn't have to be a beautiful, wonderful document. You're just sharing the information. And then, like I said, spend no more than one day of a huge commitment. But then immediately when you come out of this process, whatever takeaways you have, if that happens to be like coding issues or feature changes, add those to your backlog right away. So here's just a quick example of a debrief document that we did for code.gov. And it just has 4 headings here. What we tested, what observations did we have, what fixes are we going to implement, and what are we going to do next for our next round of testing. I actually prefer to block out time on my calendar so that I have it scheduled. I have time for the user research or user testing or whatever UX experiment we're doing for the month on my calendar. I see it, I know it's upcoming, and I can plan for it. And you might be able to do that every month, but I've found for myself like every other month kind of works best. So like I said, I am remote. All the work that I have done has been remote UX testing, remote user research. I've actually never done it in person because I have been remote for like 13 years. And so I just wanted to share some of the tips that I have if folks are newly remote and just getting started or just getting interested in this. So again, like we just use the tools that we already have. I don't think we've ever purchased anything additional or extra to do any of our UX work. So within the team, we just use our shared documents. And at GSA, that means we're using G Suite. So we're using Google Documents for our interview guides. We're using spreadsheets to record our observations, and then Google Forms to share the consent form and get recognition on the consent form. So just whatever systems you have, you can use those. And then for actually conducting the user interviews, we use Zoom and Google Meet. And one tip I have there is kind of queue up 2 different methods, because we know in government that not everyone can use Zoom, not everyone can use Google. And so you kind of just have to have a couple of things ready in your back pocket if you have a person interested in participating, but they can't use the exact tool that you have. And then, like I said, we also use our community listservs and emails to find users to participate. And just a few quick tips for remote interviews: send a read ahead of the consent form, but also in the interview, have them verbally read and acknowledge it as well. So you would ask the user if you record the session. If you're doing that, they would confirm you can record, start the recording, and then have them read the consent and verbally consent. So that is all official and acknowledged. Then if you're having them answer multi-part questions, or really if you're in user usability testing and you're having them complete a task, I found it best to read that task out loud and then drop it in the chat of whatever tool we were using so they could have that as a reference. People get a little nervous when you say it's usability testing. And so just having that information gives them a little more reassurance. And then after every session, after your participant drop off, whoever you have on your team who's observing, which I would encourage you to have at least one other person join you, sit there in the video chat for a few minutes, just talk about your observations, like chat about what you thought, but then also stop and take time to take a break before the next user interview. Another method you can use for data collection is an analytics review. And everyone, I think, is required to use DAP by now, the digital analytics program. So you should have access to at least some analytics data. I'm not going to deep dive into this right now. We're actually, Digital Gov is doing a partnership case study with the digital analytics program. And so it's a 3-part case study, which actually you can join as an event. The first one we already did, and it's recorded. And view the recording. The second one is actually this afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern. That will be recorded as well, so you don't have to worry about missing any of your GovCon sessions. And then part 3 is going to be October 21st. So go ahead and check that out for a really great deep dive into an analytics review and setting goals and all that sort of stuff. It's awesome. So one more method I just wanted to mention really quick, which is one of those kind of free and low time consuming methods, is a search results review. And you can do this with the data out of search.gov, which I also think is required for every federal site now based on the 21st Century Idea Act. And so you can or extract that all out to a spreadsheet and then kind of glance over it and organize it. So this sheet here represents an exercise I did. I think this one is from a few months ago, where I just exported the top queries out of our site and dropped them into the sheet and then tried to categorize them a little bit. And then actually went back to our website, typed in the query to see what was the top result from that query on our website, and then considered, okay, is this actually a good result that someone interested in this topic might want to use or click on, or is this helpful, or is it kind of a bad result, or do we just not have anything on that topic? Which you can see we identified here, there are a couple of things that we could make some improvements on. So this is also analyze of your user behavior and get some real data out of a free tool. So the next thing in our little experiment formula is, after you've got your data, your qualitative and quantitative, you actually can dive in and make a change to improve the user experience. And that doesn't have to be a huge change. Here's an example of one we did on digital.gov. We had an observation while we were looking at some of our stats that the number of search queries on our site seemed really low. And the hypothesis that was developed was that search queries would increase if the users on our guides and resource page was actually presented with a more prominent search box. So the change we did was just add this search box to the top of the page. And that was one pull request, I think a few hours of developer work. It wasn't a huge thing, but it's a change that we could do immediately, and we could monitor those search query numbers to see if the change that we made was making a difference. And that's the next step of this user experience experiment formula. So you want to monitor those metrics and then iterate and tweak them some things and just try again. So going back to this example of adding this big search box, for this particular change, we actually went from 1,500 queries to 3,046 queries in a matter of months. And not all UX experiments are going to go this way. way, but that was just incredible to see and super awesome. So the last thing that you want to do, and maybe one of the most important things, is for whatever you're doing, please write it up, share it, you know, drop it to us in Digital Gov so that we can post about your successes. We can also post about your challenges. Even if something doesn't work out, there are lessons to be learned and a lot of great things that you can share with your communities. And doing a write-up of like a success story or case study really does help to demonstrate internally the value to your stakeholders and show how you are advocating for the success of your users. And that's really important. So another formula, I'm an engineer, so I like systems and processes and formulas. And here's one for calculating your return on investment. So you take your old metric, the one you baselined quite a while ago before you started your experiment. And then after you finish your experiment, you take a new value of that same metric and then calculate the difference and the percent change. So as an example, using our search queries experiment, our old metric was 1,501 queries. Our new metric was 3,046 queries. So that gave us a difference of 1,545 or 103% increase. And when you switch the numbers and kind of evaluate them like this, instead of just saying, oh, now we've got over, putting it in this sort of perspective as like 103% increase, that's really awesome. And that will definitely catch the eyes of stakeholders and leadership. It's something to brag about. So success story template. This is something you may have done already. It's similar to doing like a case study template. And you just start off by identifying like, what were the challenges we had? What did we have difficulty in understanding? How did we try and answer those questions or solve that problem that we had? What was the result of this experiment that we did? And in the end, what impact did it have? And here's just a quick example of how I might, in just a few sentences, create a success story. And intent is not that you have a super filled out, really long success story or case study right off the bat. It's just important that you record something right away. You can always come back and expand this out and add more to it, and make it more of like a one pager. But it's really hard if you don't kind of record these things along the way. And so doing this is like helping your future self. So it's really important. And so if you want to get some more examples of government usability case studies, we do have quite a few on Digital Gov. And again, I'll drop some links in the Slack after this. And if you yourself have any success stories, please do let us know. We absolutely love sharing stories from federal agencies, what you're doing, how you're doing it. Like that's the number one thing that folks tell us when we are doing our research that they want to hear about. Use cases, case studies, success stories about what other agencies are doing. And so just some final tips here before I close out. Number one thing, just start somewhere. Like I said, start where you are with what you have. Try not to get bogged down with analysis paralysis. Like do something and figure it out as you go. And you can scale whatever you're working on along the way. And the more you're able to do these little experiments and share your success stories, that will help you get more money and resources and budget to scale up your user experience program for whatever project you're working on. I would encourage folks to check out a starter kit or depot of resources before you make things from scratch. I think all of the things that I have used so far are like templates from other programs, or like I said, from usability.gov or other things that I've seen. So you don't have to start from scratch, but it's super important that you actually do like take those templates, customize them for your program, and then you can use them over and over again. And most of all, remember that like you're amazing. Public service is hard, especially in times like this. So you're awesome. Keep up the good work. I'd love to hear about it on Digital Gov. And just to close out, wanted to express some gratitude again to all of you for coming and joining me in these weeks, and the Drupal GovCon organizers for just continuing to put together this super amazing conference and putting so many hours into it. If you don't know, all of the organizing team is volunteer, so they're putting in their own personal hours to bring you this super great event. And thanks also again to the sponsors and volunteers for helping make all this happen. If you want to get in touch with me, you can do so at sarah.cope@gsa.gov. Honestly, I read email like once a week, so you'll either get a reply from me in 2 minutes or 2 weeks. So if you want to have a quick chat, you can hit me up on Twitter at Sarah Sasson. I also will definitely be in the Drupal GovCon Slack. If you're not there already, head on over. And then if you have something to share or you want to develop a case study, we at Digital Gov would love to help you with that. So you can email us at digitalgov@gsa.gov or hit us up on Twitter and Facebook. I would definitely highly encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter and join a community practice. If you're not in one already, we do have a user experience community of practice. And for November, we're actually going to be highlighting and focusing on usability as our theme for the month of November. So join our newsletter to see some upcoming content around the same topic and maybe a few announcements. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sarah. It was awesome to hear you all over again. If you have any questions for her, she will be in the Slack. Specifically, it's the keynote-thursday. So if you're looking for the channel, that's where to go and ask some questions. And that is it for the keynote for today. Please make sure you head to the networking room again. If you need any help, we're more likely to be on Slack or Twitter than we are answering emails. So thanks, everyone. Thanks again, Sarah. Have a great day.